In this lesson, we're going to look at how to change the subject of a formula. Now, this means moving around the formula, just like you would with an equation, so that a designated letter is isolated and on its own. So let's have a look at how this works with a few examples. So in this first one, we've got to make x the subject. So identify where x is and start to rearrange this thing until you've got x on its own. Now, just like the equations, you want to start on the outside and work in. So the last thing that is acting on that x is the +3. So that's the first thing that we want to get rid of. So we'll start by taking away 3 from both sides, and that will leave us with just a y minus 3 on the left and a 3x on the right. Now we're going to divide through by 3, and we will then have y minus 3 divided by that 3 is equal to x, and that's pretty much our answer. Now, it's expected though that the subject will be on the left hand side of the equation, so we can flip this round nice and easily and write our final answer: x equals y minus 3 over 3, and we are finished. Okay, this one looks more complicated, but it's not. We've got to make x the subject. Now, there's a couple of ways of doing this. I'm going to show you both ways. So first of all, we need to take away 3b from the left hand side. That's going to just get rid of a few more things and leave x almost on its own. So if we take 3b from both sides, we're going to have just a minus 2x on the left, and on the right we'll have 12y minus that 3b. The last thing to do is to divide both sides by 2. Sorry, excuse me, I should say minus 2. So x is equal to 12y minus 3b, all divided by minus 2, and that will be an acceptable answer. There's nothing wrong with that, it's absolutely fine. Okay, there is a better way of doing it though, in my opinion, and that is to start with the same equation, but first to add 2x to both sides. So if I add 2x to both sides, I'll be left with 3b is equal to 12y plus 2x. Now what that's done is it's made the x positive. It's made it into a positive value. We don't have to worry about dividing through by a negative. Okay, once we've done that, we can take 12y from both sides. So 3b minus 12y is equal to 2x. And now we can divide through by 2. And that gives us 3b minus 12y all over 2 is equal to x. And that is an acceptable answer as well. Now, if you notice that this thing is different to this thing. However, they are both acceptable answers, when you're doing a Year 7 material. You don't like to have negative numbers on denominators, but it is acceptable at this stage. And in fact, if I were to times the top and bottom of that fraction by minus 1, you would actually be able to work it back to being the solution on the right. Okay, this one is actually a easier one. You've got to make x the subject. X is being multiplied by a, so we need to divide both sides by a. That means that y divided by a is x. Just change it around again, of course. X equals y over a, as we want to keep our subject on the left hand side, but that's all. Example 4, we've got to make x the subject here. Well, x is being divided by b, so we want to multiply both sides by b. br equals x is the correct answer. If I times the left hand side by b, I get br. If I times the right hand side by b, it just undoes the divide by b, leaving the x as we need it. I should say before moving on, we need to write that on the left, x equals br. In this question, we've got a couple of things to do. Now, we've got to decide, are we going to undo the 4 by doing a divide by 4, or are we going to square root undoing that squared? And if you think of the laws of BIDMAS, the 4 is on the outside of this. That happens last, so that's the thing we've got to do first. So the first thing to do is divide by 4. So on the left hand side we have q over 4 is equal to x squared, and then we want to square root both sides. So the square root of q over 4 is equal to x. Now we could just turn that round. X is equal to the square root of q over 4 is a final answer. That is acceptable, but if you're being clever and you want to go a bit ahead, then we could write our answer as the square root of q over 2, because the square root of 4 is 2, and you can split up a square root into its components if they are a division. That's acceptable as well. Okay, making the x the subject here. Well, we'll start off by moving the x to the left-hand side at the beginning because it's negative. It's got a negative 13 attached. So I'm going to start by adding 13 to both sides. So 13x plus y would be on the left, and that would leave us with just a 12d on the right. If I now want to get x on its own, well, the first thing to do is take away a y from both sides. That would leave me with just the 13x being equal to 12d minus y. Now I can divide through by 13. X is equal to 12d minus y, all divided by 13. And there's the solution to that one. Final question. We've got a equals a quarter pi x squared. Now we've got this expression on the right being times by a quarter. But I don't like to write divide by a quarter. That's confusing. You can't have a fraction inside a fraction. So another way of undoing a quarter is to times by 4 or multiply by 4. Now if I multiply both sides by 4, I'll have 4a on the left, and a quarter times 4 is just 1. So we've just got one lot of pi x squared, or pi x squared. The quarter disappears. Now we need to do, or undo I should say, the multiply by pi. So we'll have 4a divided by pi is equal to x squared. And the final thing to do is to square root both sides, which is the square root of 4a over pi is equal to x. Just rearranging, so x is on the left, x equals the square root of 4a over pi. And that's the solution to that question. That completes the video. You should have enough there to access the work in front of you. Good luck!